We will call our meeting to order here for May the 10th. Thank you all for joining us very much. We'd like to begin our meeting with our Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll ask our VFW Commander Gary Harris to come forward to lead us in that pledge.
Present arms. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. If you all will please take a moment to join us in a moment of silence. Thank you all very much. Council members, I don't believe we have any minutes that we're reviewing this time, so at this time we'll open the floor for citizen comment. Now I will mention as we do this, you're more than welcome to come down and give us 3 minutes of citizen comment. Please state your name for the record. We do have a public hearing later in the meeting to address our Ordinance 1751, the tobacco and cigarette tax. So that's not necessary at this point in time. You're more than welcome to if you choose to, but at this point in time, this is primarily for citizen comment for matters for public record. So at this time, we'll open the floor. Seeing no one joining us for any citizen comment, we will go on and close that portion of the meeting. And since we have not had any comment, we don't need any council response. At this time, we will turn to a couple of proclamations that we have. First up is National Police Week, and I'm going to turn this over to Councilmember Height in just a moment. This is certainly an important designation for us to review as a council and something that gives us an opportunity to show our support for those folks who work so hard to protect us, especially during a challenging period in our nation's history as we continue to move forward and find our path for the entire country. And so, Forrest, if you would like to share the National Police Week proclamation.
Proclamation for National Police Week 2021. Whereas there are more than 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Radford City Police Department, and whereas the safety and well-being of the citizens of Radford are of the utmost importance to the Radford City Police Department, and whereas individuals have committed their lives to protecting and serving Radford's families, businesses, neighborhoods, schools, and community, and whereas the men and women of RCPD risk their lives in the line of duty to maintain the safety of our community while striving to uphold the rule of law, and whereas all citizens of Radford value the courage, commitment, and leadership demonstrated by our state and local law enforcement officers who work diligently to ensure our safety, and whereas we pay tribute to the officers who have fallen in the line of duty and recognize the sacrifices made by the families of those officers, as well as the families of those who continue to protect and serve our communities, and whereas it is critical that we understand the roles and responsibilities of law enforcement officers within our communities and commemorate and pay tribute to the dedicated service of officers past and present, now therefore, the City Council of the City of Radford does hereby proclaim May 9 to 15, 2021 as National Police Week in the City of Radford and publicly salutes the service of law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across the nation. Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept this proclamation as read.
We have a motion to accept the proclamation for National Police Week. I would like to make a second to that motion. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations. We have several members of our law enforcement community here. We're going to ask you to come down front. Please come down and join us. And Chief, I'm actually going to ask you to let everybody introduce themselves if that's okay. I think it would be perfectly appropriate if you all line up right here. Councilmember Height has the proclamation for you. And we'll stay masked. If you all choose to unmask for the photo, I think that's fine as well. Remember, he said that, okay? That goes on his permanent record. Go ahead, Jenny. Chief, will you introduce everybody?
Yes, so we have Sergeant Height, works in our community outreach section of our department. Sergeant Connor, he's one of our patrol supervisors. Officer Weston works in our patrol division. Officer Gilmore, Officer Costa Torres, both are in the patrol section. Lieutenant Mansdorfer, Canon Officer Furman, Officer Brown, and Canon Officer Miller.
Can we give them a round of applause, please? I'll just say we want to say thank you for all that you do. This is a difficult time in our nation's history for our police, for our communities, and everybody trying to find their way. I know that the city has worked especially hard to mitigate some of those issues, particularly with Sergeant Height and her role, but every officer's role as they're working with the community. And I know, Chief, you have a presentation for us later this evening. So, again, just thank you all so much, and please give them one more round of applause to wrap things up. Thank you. We have so many people who serve us as a community, and one of the most important areas that we recently brought back into the city's umbrella of service is our emergency medical service. And I can speak to this personally. My mom has needed help from our EMS team multiple times in the last few years, and without question, they have served so incredibly well. And so here with the proclamation is Councilmember Foster.
City of Radford Proclamation, Emergency Medical Services Week. Whereas the City of Radford is committed to ensuring the health and safety of all those living in and visiting Radford, and whereas emergency medical services are a vital public service, and whereas the member of Radford's Emergency Medical Services team are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. And whereas emergency medical services have grown to fill a gap by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventative medicine, follow-up care, and access to telemedicine. And whereas the members of Radford's Emergency Medical Services team, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of emergency medical services and providers by designating Emergency Medical Service Week. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Radford does hereby proclaim the week of May 16th through the 22nd, 2021 as Emergency Medical Services Week, and encourages the Radford community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. And Mayor, I make a motion that we adopt this proclamation.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations. Would you all come on down? We have representatives of our firefighting and EMS teams. You all come on and join us. The whole team, we want the whole group down here.
There you go.
Sorry, you got to be front and center. And I think they deserve a round of applause as well. And Chief, will you introduce your team?
Yep, firefighter EMT Henry Barnett, firefighter EMT Jessica Burton, and Captain Gary Aiken.
Thank you all so much for all that you do. I know that it has been a challenge as we have reintegrated our EMS with our fire department, but you all have done a beautiful job, and we can't say thank you enough. So
Thank you all.
we appreciate it. And Jessica, we won't let you get too comfortable. We'll ask you to come forward because we do have a presentation next on our docket today. The International Association of Firefighters have a presentation for us, and Jessica Burton, I believe, is going to do that presentation. So come on down.
Mind if I take this off?
No, you go right ahead. That's fine. Just pull the microphone close to your mouth so we can hear what you're saying. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay. All this is new, so give me, no. I have some pamphlets for y'all, if y'all
Okay.
would like to look at them while we're
Please,
doing
just
the.
bring those forward. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks for letting us do this. Well, my name's Jessica Burton Moore. I am here representing the Radford Professional Firefighter and EMS Association. I'm here representing them as their president. This is also a local chapter of the International Association of Firefighters, known as IAFF. Also, we have a local already. It is Radford Local 5330. Oh, I have the little thingy. This is just some of the actions that we do. The IAFF membership is made up of 320,000 members of full-time professional firefighters and EMS workers in the United States and Canada. We do elect all of our officers. None of them are appointed. We have it's a pretty strict guidelines that you have to do. It's all about our brothers and sisters. It's strictly all it's about, is surrounding them, helping the community. Some of our objectives in this is to help promote health, safety, and wellness. We already have some of that, but you can always be better when it comes to health and safety and wellness, especially mental health. Mental health is it needs so much more, publicity. And we all are gathering for a common purpose. That's the goal. This is the fire of Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York City. It was a pivotal point in the United States labor of history. It happened in 1911. Out of 500 workers, 147 laborers died. Back then, they didn't have hardly any laws, if any at all, so they locked the doors while they worked. They had underage children working, and 146 of them perished, most of them due to jumping out of the windows of a 10-story building. Quite a few of the firefighters in this time also perished due to not having any gear. It wasn't common to have the turnout gear. That is one thing that the IAFF has really helped set forth is the standards. In response to such work, as the firefighters joined together in this association to improve their working conditions and their lives, including their family, and to help give them a voice. Some people don't like to talk. They like to stay in the back. I don't know. It's a lot of, I'm one of them. I don't like to talk. But they still have to be heard. And that's a lot of what this is about. In 1955, the AFL joined the Congress of the CIO, Industrial Organization, to form the largest organization in the world. Today, the IAFF is one of the largest of the 53 unions that make up the AFL and the CIO, along with teachers, miners, nurses, and all other trades. One thing I do want to point out, though, there is so many different associations and unions out there. You just have to make sure you know which one you're looking at, because they are structured so differently. You have the United Steelworkers, they are structured so different than the IAFF. So I just want to make sure people understand that just because it states union doesn't mean that they are all run the same. They're totally different on our standpoint. These are some of the front lines that the IAFF has helped put in effect. For example, like the NFPA 1500, the Wellness and Fitness, Project Hero, OSHA, Project Fires, the National Commission of Fire Prevention and Control. The IAFF is responsible for a lot of the improvements. Staffing, operation and response, improvement of turnout gear. physical tests, to reduce the risk and improve health. Safer. Safer is staffing of adequate fire and emergency response. Safer grants were established in 2011. This provides funding directly to the fire departments to help increase and maintain personnel. And nowadays, it's hard to get people to want to work, it seems like, and they help with that. They have stepped up a lot in a lot of the bigger cities. In 2006, the Peer Fitness, they trained over 5,000 peer team members to help with PTSD, substance abuse in their facility that they have up in Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. The IAFF and the AIFC, which is the International Associations of Fire Chiefs, they have the Wellness Fitness, which is a mandatory positive program for health and fitness, so that the members of the fire and EMS are able to do their job, to get them ready, get them prepared. And this, I think, pertains to everybody. Nothing matters more to our members and their families than the health and safety of the firefighters and paramedics, because we want to go home just like any other working person. So after a 24-hour shift, just like any other hardworking individual, with the main goal to make it home to our loved ones. As stated in the previous two slides, the best objective of the IAFF was to push for the safety of all firefighters and EMS. This is not only just safety of equipment, but also mental, physical, and emotional. The IAFF, for the fallen families, they have the line of duty investigation. We do that already with fatalities, but this would be considered like a third party. It would be just another set of eyes. So anybody that is a member, they do their own internal investigation. The Fallen Firefighter Memorial is in Colorado. It honors everyone who has died since 1918 on this wall. It was reconstructed in 2015. The McLean Scholarship, it is a scholarship that gives $2,500 to students of fallen firefighters. They send in a grant, so they have to do a little bit of work. But it's $2,500 is what each student, and as so far this year, they've done 40. The Public Safety Officer Benefit Act and the AIFF urges Congress to pass provides money for families and firefighters who died in the line of duty. This includes EMS. This is a paid and volunteers, and law enforcement also have this. Includes heart attacks and strokes, which was amended in a later time. They're really big on Muscular Dystrophy Association. They have what is called a boot drive. They do it every year to raise funds, and as of right now, they have $585.5 million has been raised for this cause. And that is something that every local can do. We can do it here. And it does, and they also have a camp for MDA all around the country for these kids of fallen firefighters. This is what we have. We have a president, a vice president, a secretary, treasurer, and executive board. All of these positions, you are nominated and then voted. The voting process is a secret ballot in a locked box. We have 2 of our members who count these ballots. If anyone that is nominated does not feel comfortable, they can ask another member to also join. Once the ballots are counted and tallied up, you are notified, and then you accept it. Once you accept it, then we do all that in a meeting. We accept you and welcome you in. And this is what we have as of right now. President is Jessica Burton, Vice President David Camacho, Secretary Treasurer is Henry Barnett, Executive Board members are Jamie Carpenter and Jason Gifford. The president and vice president are responsible for representing the members' interest, along with all board members. So no one makes any decision without voting. Everything comes to the table. It doesn't matter if you don't like the color of the shirt that we have to wear. It's voted on. So this is their peer support. We also have started a peer support team at the Radford Fire Department. So this is a big plus to me. It's one-on-one. You know, if you have any problems, difficulties on calls, there's people there to talk to. This is just a huge place. It's a very nice facility. They have over 5,500 members trained. And like I said, it is located in right outside of Washington, D.C. in Maryland. It's called the IAFF Center of Excellence and Behavioral Health Treatment and Recovery Center.
Have we had some of our folks actually go there?
Not that I know of personally, but some of our other charter and locals, they have.
Okay.
One I remember, I was actually talking to him last week. He was doing pretty bad. He went there, he stayed for 6 weeks and come back, and he could not talk highly enough about it.
Great.
They believe that it really did help him. So they're very highly rated, but it's for fire and EMS personnel. It's just a place to go and get away, and from what I read up, it's a good place. I would love to go visit it as a, visitor.
Right.
The IFS structure is similar to Fraternal Order of Police in the way that it is structured. We really would love to have the support of everyone. We want to work together. You can't do anything with, by yourself. Everything, the team member, especially with fire and EMS, nothing is done by yourself. And so the more we can get on board, I think it would, I personally am looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to working with everybody, and I hope that y'all are too. And if there's any questions y'all have, feel free to ask. I'm new at this and learning. We're kind of new, so if I don't know the answer, I'll be glad to find it out and give it to you.
Thank you so much for this presentation. We're new at all this too, so we're learning a lot. How many of the folks that work in Radford are members of Local 5330?
We have 13 active members right now.
Okay. And you all been active for how long?
It started, was it the 26th, Henry?
February 26th?
Yes.
Okay. Council members, are there questions? Let's start with the Vice Mayor. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, I would just like to begin by saying thank you for coming and educating us and sharing all of this with us. I appreciated the time that you took to set the stage about all of the protections and the progress that has been made by a lot of the previous work that other unions and the IAFF has already established, so I appreciated that background. One thing that stood out to me during your presentation was the focus on mental health that you have, and you specifically seemed to really hone in on that. And I thought that was very interesting, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the peer support team that you're currently working on and that you're providing, because I think there is this idea that there is so much importance to physical health, but you're right, the mental health aspect gets lost. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
About what we have at the fire department now?
Yes.
We have 5 members right now that are trained. We have a phone number. Each member has the phone for a week, because it's kind of hard for somebody to have it all the time.
Sure.
So we've went through training. You do individual and you can do group. That will be our next goal. But right now it's pretty kind of honing in on this station, our home, when we work, and to taking care of our people, because we know what they're going through. We can relate. So it seems like they talk easier. And when you're with somebody for 24 hours, you can kind of tell when something's going on, their body language, they're withdrawn. And I think it's worked really well at Radford. We've, thank God we haven't had any, phone calls since we've got the phone, but we have done about 3 one-on-ones. And we reach out to the ER, the nurses in the ER. We reach out to the police department and to the local police departments, Dublin, Pulaski. We also reach out to them. They have our number, contact information. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Other questions? Jesse, do you have anything?
Yes, just to give us perspective, you had mentioned that there are 13 members active, and that would be out of a total of how many?
I think we have a total of 25, and that includes 2 floaters. Is that right, Gary? 25? Yeah, 25. That
Okay.
includes 2 floaters.
Okay. One thing that caught my attention is you had mentioned really the top priority is health and safety. And so, I guess what comes to my mind is there something that in regards to the health and safety of our firefighters that as a city we've been negligent on?
You can never be too safe.
No, I agree.
There's always.
But is there something that we need to, I come and visit and ask these questions because I want to make sure that
Yeah.
you're given all the tools that you need to be healthy and safe.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I was just wondering, is there something specific that you can touch on that as a council we need to be aware of and focus on a little bit more?
I can't think of one thing off the top of my head. It's just, when I say safety, I'm talking about like the new stuff. Let's look at things a little different. Let's see if there's a safer way to do it. See if there's a safer way to get the person out of the 5th store floor, the floor. Let's look at things different, come together as a group of brothers and sisters and talk about things, not just one person sets the goal for everybody. That's what my goal is.
And in support of that goal, is there any, I guess what Councilman Foster's hitting at is there any equipment or resources that you need that would help you further along in that accomplishment of that goal of safety, increased safety?
That is something that's actually going to get brought up in our next meeting.
Okay.
We meet actually tomorrow. Tomorrow, Wednesday, is our meeting days. And that was actually one of the things we was going to bring up and have everybody bring to the table on what their concerns are, individual, and then see where we can go from there.
Collectively.
Like, this is like kind of all new. We kind of just
Sure.
started getting, we just got our local. And then the next, we're trying to do it step by step, like we're told to do. It's very structured. So, like I said, we're all new at this too. So, our next meeting the plan is to start writing down concerns, problems, things we want to see change that maybe hasn't been addressed, so that's the next goal.
Walking us through that process of, when you say receiving that local, the official designation, what that looked like for you?
We will get the official, it would be the 17th, I believe. I have to actually go to Leesburg to a conference for a training, and they were going to bring it up here to give it to everybody at the station, but with COVID, some cities are not as lenient as others, so they're going to do it there. But the process is pretty tedious. You have to get your members. You only have to have 3 for the IAFF, but you have to get members that are with you from the beginning. Then you have to apply. So you have to fill out pretty much just like a job. You have to fill out paperwork and know a history. Then you have to send it in, and then they have to approve it. Then you have to write a bylaw, which is normally a standard for all IAFFs, but then you tweak it to your wording. Like ours, we tweaked mail to email, but it has to be marked through, addressed, and then they have to approve, even if it's just that one word. And then once they do that, you get your members. You just ask them, explain to them what it is, and if they're interested in it, that's fine, and if they're not, that's fine too. We're all,
I have a couple other questions. One was, you had mentioned there's the 13 out of the 25, and I'm sure you've been having conversations with the other 12 as well. Can you tell us what some of the reservations have been with the 12 that do not want to join?
I think some of them don't understand what it is. I know now is probably a bad time. There's a lot of stuff in the news going on with different unions and stuff. I prefer to say association because that's what it is. And we have totally different set of rules for that. And I think that has confused some people. I've given them the address, the website, told them to go look, any questions they had that they could, bring it to any of us. We'd be glad to answer them. And I think some of them are afraid a little bit of retaliation. I think because it's new, it's new, it's not been here before, and I think they're afraid of how people are going to look at it. I think that's the biggest reserve.
Okay, and then you had made a point to mention and kind of stress that not all unions or associations are the same.
Right.
So when you guys were looking at that affiliation that you wanted to make, what were the pros and cons that made this one different to you?
This one was mental health. They are so strong for mental health. They were one of the few that had their actual own facility. A lot of, especially the big locals, that is free because they have money set aside. And they also help with the family. And a lot of places won't do family. It's strictly the person itself, and the family has to go find their own. That was the big one for me.
Was there any area of concern you had with this one in comparison to some of the others?
No, I haven't been able to find anything that made me want to stop and say, I don't really know. I know a lot of people that's in it, so I talked to multiple ones, and the two that I talked to that did not like it, the reasoning was they did not like it because they did not hold a position. And they did not like that part. They thought they should have a position that is voted on by everybody. It's a secret ballot. I didn't really understand his concern. I mean, I listened to it, but I didn't understand it. So I went back and looked at how they were supposed to do that, which is how we did it, and I think he was just mad and hurt that he didn't get a position, and that's understandable,
Right.
especially if you've done a lot of work.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Forrest, we haven't had a chance to hear from you. Do you have any questions?
No questions, but just reiterate our gratitude for you coming out and helping us walk through. Like Mayor said, we're new to all this too, so we appreciate your help
Oh, yeah.
and hope we can have some open communication back and forth as you meet more.
Yeah.
And so, thank you.
I'm hoping the same thing, so.
Well, and thank you, Forrest. I think the biggest challenge for all of us is finding a good way to have these discussions in a positive and friendly environment. We hope that's what you're going to perceive as you come and talk with us. One of the things that you mentioned that I wanted to focus on a little bit is having a voice for the group. Right now, you're serving very much as a voice for your group, as the president of the organization. If there was something you wanted council to know now, what would that be?
To work with us,
Sure.
we're struggling too in the aspect of it's new. We're learning just like you guys are. So first impressions shouldn't always be the last impression.
Sure.
But open communication. We want to work with you guys. We're all here for the same goal, to make Radford a safer, better place. And you can't do that by yourself. You have to do it as a group. And so that communication.
Well, and I was also going to ask you, if there was something that you felt was at the top of your list, but since you mentioned you all are going to meet in the next few days to talk about that. Will you come back and see us at our next council meeting and talk about what you all have identified as some of the challenges? I mean, certainly work through the chief and the city manager, and Mrs. Foster's our council liaison with the fire and EMS, but I think we want to just know where things stand and what's going on. You know, we identified the fire department as one of our priority areas. Fire and EMS is something we needed to address. When the decision was made a few years ago to bring EMS back in-house, we knew we had some challenges because we were bringing more people into a fixed space, and we didn't automatically have a whole new facility to be able to utilize with that. Plus the fact that for 40 years, 35 years, we've talked about fire facilities in Radford and tried to find a path to that. And I know we've been working on a study to see what's available to us, what options are available to us as a city to try to address some of those challenges. So please do keep that part of the conversation going with us so that we can better serve you guys and you can then in turn serve our citizens. Because I think that's the real challenge, is knowing where we have areas that we can do better and improve. We've been thinking far more, just speaking for myself, we've been thinking far more about facilities and equipment, but I appreciate the mental health component of what you're talking about, especially coming through a year like 2020, dealing with the pandemic and all the issues that might be related there, some of the isolation that's just naturally had to be a part of everyone's role during that time. I think we're more than open to having discussions about what we can do better as a community to be supportive of our fire and EMS team throughout this process. Is there anything else you would like to let us know this evening?
Not that I can think of.
Well, thank you so much for coming to see us, and we look forward to having you back again, and we'll continue this conversation.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. So public safety is a huge component of our agenda this evening, which is very appropriate. As we have worked through the pandemic year, as we have talked about so many of the things that have been a challenge for us, I think checking in with our departments regularly is important. Our police chief, Jeff Dodson, has put together a report with his team to kind of go through things and share with us. I know we received a physical copy of the report at our last meeting, but Chief Dodson is here in person to share a virtual copy as well. So Chief, the floor is yours.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you guys for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight, and I'm just honored to be able to speak with you tonight and just highlight, like you mentioned, you guys have received a hard copy of this, and there's a lot of hard work, a lot of accomplishments. We set pretty high goals despite a pandemic and despite other challenges that we had in 2020, and we've put a lot out in 2020, so I just want to highlight some of that. Tonight, we're going to go over, again, those goals and accomplishments that we set for 2020. We're going to talk a little bit about statistics and some departmental data, and then look at the forecast for 2021. So I put this organizational chart up here as just a reflection of, this is 55 total staff members within our department. We have 39 sworn officers, 15 non-sworn, includes our communications center and also our civilian support staff. And we have one part-timer that assists us at the animal shelter. And I can tell you that every single person on that organizational chart, 55 different people, contributed to what you see in this document here and what you're going to see tonight. And I can also tell you that there's much bigger departments, 100, 150 people that didn't accomplish near what this total of 55 people accomplished here in Radford. So I'm certainly proud of that. It's something that the community should be proud of in Radford, but it's a lot of good work with 55 folks. Everything that we did this year when we set out, when I got here in January, boy, I didn't know what was coming. Got here in January, I thought it would be a honeymoon stage. A few months in, they're like COVID, police reform, civil unrest, all sorts of craziness happening. But when we set these goals in 2020, we really looked at 21st century policing and how we could align our goals with 21st century policing. And what you see here on the screen is those 6 pillars. A lot of times, if you've heard me speak before, you probably heard me talk about the 6 pillars and how we're doing with that. But pillar number 1, building trust and legitimacy. That's what it's about. Starts with trust. Policy and oversight, technology and social media is number 3. Community policing and crime reduction, number 4. training and education, number 5, and then number 6, officer wellness and safety is big as well. Number 1, building trust and legitimacy. In 2020, one of the goals that we set out was we wanted to add 2 SROs. Prior to 2020, we had 1 SRO covering 3 different locations. We wanted to provide some better security for our schools, better engagement with our students in the schools, so we wanted to add those 2 SRO positions, and we did. We did that, and we also, in addition to adding those positions, we found grant funding for that. So we got some grant funding to do that. School safety, one of the things that, 2 different areas with that is with McHarg, early in 2020, there was discussions happening about the planning and construction and renovation. I know that we participated in a lot of those talks with Thompson and Litton and some of the plans that were happening about safety and security with that new renovation. And also with Bell Heath, we actually partnered with Radford University and did a comprehensive CPTED, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design, study of Bell Heath of how they could improve security there at the school. And I know that Rob Graham at the schools and the school system has implemented some of that. But pretty impressive. I know they used drones, they used different technology to do that and made a report there for the school system. Increased community engagement and outreach activities. We'll get into that a little more later in the discussion, but that is a huge part of building trust and legitimacy. That was a huge goal of ours. Formation of the Chiefs Advisory Panel, starting in about July, August timeframe, we started talking about this. I think our first meeting that we had with the Chiefs Advisory Panel was sometime in October, but that is really a 15-member panel that is made up of all different facets of the Radford community. We have residential representation, business representation, school system personnel that's on there. We have the Chamber of Commerce that's represented, Radford University, New River Community Action, faith-based leader on that, NAACP. We have a representative on the panel as well. So that was a goal that we wanted to do to increase our transparency, increase our engagement and trust with the community, and we did that. Something that happened, we wanted to, again, talking on the lines of transparency, we wanted to increase our transparency, which in turn builds trust with the community, was our transparency portal on our agency website. So late in 2020, we actually put a section of our website that we now publish incident blotters. We do a weekly incident log that goes onto that. We also do our crime statistics will be going on that. We have our internal affairs summary for 2020 that's on that. There's plans of the future, maybe putting policies, some certain policies that'll go on that, and also our community policing data, our traffic stop race data goes on that section as well. This kind of slipped into 2021, just a little bit into it, but our community survey, which is ongoing right now, that's something that's happening now, but that was a goal that we set out to do as well.
Can I pause you for one
Absolutely.
quick second? I don't want to belabor this, but that transparency portal, I think, is a really crucial component of this. I have not been as aware of what's available on that, and I don't know what other residents may be. Can you just talk just a little bit more about that and what the timeline is for some of the things that you mentioned that are going to be a part of that?
Yeah, so some of that's already on there now. I know currently, and Sergeant Heights here, if I missed something, speak up, but I know we got our weekly we update the incident log chart. That's on there currently. We also have the monthly crime maps. We publish a monthly crime map. Our yearly internal affairs data is on that. Our community policing data is not on the transparency portal. We wanted to make that information a little easier for residents to find, so we actually put that on the main page of our website. So when you log on to the police department website, that's right on the beginning. Our Chiefs Advisory Panel members is published on our website now, not necessarily in that transparency portal section, but on the main page. So, and one of the reasons we did that, we have great discussions in our Chiefs Advisory Panel meetings, but one of the reasons that we did that is we wanted people to know who was on this panel, because if they didn't feel comfortable coming to the police department, or they didn't feel comfortable talking to me, talking to Sergeant Height, talking to somebody, they may talk to their neighbor. They may talk to a faith-based leader. We have Reverend Dean here tonight. He represents the Radford Ministerial Association on our panel. They may feel comfortable talking to Reverend. So we wanted the community to know those people that were on that panel. So that's why that's published. But Our policies, that's not on there yet, and we're actually working with Power DMS, which you'll hear about here in a moment,
Okay.
to do that. But we got some plans to put in other things, but right now, I think, am I missing anything, Emily?
Thank
That's
you. It's
it.
very helpful, and I think because that is such a new thing for us, getting more information out about that's really helpful for the community. Thank you.
Absolutely. And then number 2 there, pillar number 2 talks about policy and oversight. Again, policy and procedures, and that is a constantly moving target for us with different law changes and policing reform mandates that are coming out. We're continuously trying to update those and keep them in line with accreditation standards and best practices. One of the things that we did do this year as far as policy goes is we put in policies related to duty to intervene. Chokeholds and neck restraints was added to our policy procedure manual. And in addition to that, our policy and procedures manual had to be certified by the Department of Criminal Justice Services and the United States Department of Justice in order for us to be eligible for federal funding. I think it was like August, September timeframe, we submitted that to all of those entities and received approval for our use of force policy. So we've been signed off by the feds, been signed off by the state, and our use of force policy is compliant with all of that. So again, complying with accreditation standards, we have a state accreditation on-site coming up in February of 22. In March of 21, we actually signed on with CALEA, which is the Commission of Accreditation of Law Enforcement Agencies and National Accreditation, so we're looking forward to that and progressing. We also, in 2020, started using Power DMS and Guardian Tracking, outstanding software programs. Guardian Tracking is basically an employee tracking software. We do everything on that from tracking employee performance to use of force reporting, pursuit reporting. We do training requests on that, so anytime we want to look back at an employee's pretty much history or profile, that's where we go as Guardian. Power DMS is a policy development and management tool. What that does is actually we can edit, we can manage, we can test, we can ensure that officers have signed off on. The old way of passing around a clipboard and having officers sign a clipboard, we now do this on a phone. We put the policy manual on their cell phone. So if they have a question in the field, they just look right at it on their device or their iPad or computer. VCIN audits, which is our Virginia Criminal Information Network, audits through the state police and animal shelter inspections. We passed with flying colors on both of those. Got to throw a plug in there for Adele and Stephanie. My goodness, I mean, they are doing an awesome job down there, and we get passing report cards every time, so I can tell you I'm happy to see those. Technology and social media, we set out a goal for that to be increased, and we have done that. Technological upgrades in our 911 center. One of the things that we've sought out to do with that is really to ensure that we have backup capability with our sister center across the bridge in Pulaski. And Captain Caldwell and our folks in our 911 center have really done a lot of things. Next Gen 911 is coming down the road here very soon. We've put some stuff in place with our IT department with the city to GIS as well to make sure that that's happening. Patrol technological updates to increase efficiency and officer safety through council and through the support that we have of city council and CARES funding. We were able to just increase our technological capability in our patrol division courtesy of MDTs, e-ticketing, different technological advances there that we did in 2020. Investigations, technology upgrades, we had several there as well. Two of the most notable were our interview room cameras. We are on an old analog interview room camera system. Our body cameras that we currently have are on a WatchGuard. They're digital WatchGuard platform. What we wanted to do is bring our interview room cameras onto the same system as our body cameras to make everything simple. One system, one place to find all digital evidence. We did that. We upgraded our interview room cameras to improve audio and also improve accessibility to that video evidence. The second thing for investigations was our evidence room. We were actually on a paper-based log type system. We upgraded that and actually went to a barcode. Every piece of evidence in our evidence room now is barcoded and scanned. So we have like a scanner that you would see at a supermarket. We scan it out. There's no more writing on cards, writing on papers. We scan in, we scan out. We do everything with a scanner. It's automated.
Can
You go ahead, and then I have
I'm
a
going to
question,
jump in
too.
with a question. Going back to the interview room updates, does every officer now have, do they all have cameras?
So-
I can't recall if
Yeah,
every
so-
officer does or not.
With our body cameras, we actually are sharing body cameras currently. However, we should have an appropriation coming up here to council very soon. We've just obtained another grant from DCJS to outfit all of our officers with their own body camera.
Great,
It's about a $18,000 grant that in the next few months you'll probably be seeing that.
wonderful. Thank you.
And I'd like to go back up one above that to talk a little bit about the technology upgrades with the backup with Pulaski, which I think is perfect because we have so much interaction with the Fairlawn corridor and so much back and forth there. So a citizen brought up with me the other day about the increased activity that we have on the shared corridor with Montgomery County between Rock Road and Exit 109. How are we doing with our communication with Montgomery County on that? Because that's been one area. We have a new hotel there. We've got the new Food City at the other end. And so there's just a lot more activity there where there might be that kind of issue. Are you seeing the need for additional upgrade, or how's that working?
So I think it's working really well. Pulaski is our backup center. That tends to be more the calls that
Okay.
we're sharing with them. But as far as mutual aid and information sharing among Montgomery County and the sheriff's office and their 911 center, that's great. I mean, we
But
just
as
had-
that area continues to grow, you feel solid that we're in a good place with that?
I feel
Okay.
pretty good. And with Next Gen 911 also, one of the things that's going to happen is I think you're going to be seeing less. Now, a citizen calls, it's bouncing off of towers, it's bouncing
Right.
all around. I think with Next Gen 911, what the purpose of that is to use GIS data, and it's going to be more of those calls coming to the city of Radford as opposed to bouncing out to other jurisdictions. So.
That's perfect. And that's just one of those, we have that kind of weird little scenario here where we have two very significant areas that are adjacent to Radford but outside our jurisdiction, and that gets a little complicated.
Right,
So,
right.
thank you.
Yep. Community policing and crime reduction. In June, July last year, we did a reorganization of our department. Sergeant Height was kind of pulling double duty as communications and community outreach. Community outreach is a full-time job, so we were able to do some reorganization and dedicate Sergeant Height to that position full-time, and that's, I think, been done wonders for what we've been able to do in this arena. Traffic education and enforcement, we really, with this, you're going to see some stats later where, we've been able to have some reduction with our traffic crashes and alcohol crashes and things like that. But one of the things we wanted to do is to be more strategic and with our traffic enforcement. And we bought this traffic shield sign. Hopefully you guys have seen that in the community. You've seen it in your neighborhoods. And that thing, believe it or not, is very, very intelligent. It takes a lot of data. It actually can take pictures if we wanted to take pictures. It gives us times a day. It gives us average speeds. It gives us, a lot of different data so we can deploy our officers and deploy our resources at appropriate time, appropriate day. We can do a lot of things as opposed to just sending people out and saying, hey, see what you can find. So that's helped us a lot with our traffic education or enforcement efforts. Outreach and accessibility to the agency. That's been tough. I'll be honest with you. I came in January and my game plan was we're going to get out there, we're going to engage people. Well, wait a minute, we can't talk to people. We got to wear masks. I didn't think I'd be putting out a press release about having officers show up with masks on, but we had to do that. So it was a little odd, but despite all of those restrictions and social distancing and everything else that was going on, we were able to do quite a bit. Decrease in the overall crime rate, we'll talk about that a little bit here in a moment. Continued partnership with the city animal shelter and outreach. Again, the community shows up. When we need something at the animal shelter, they show up. I think this weekend, Adele needed duck feed. Apparently we got
Saw
some
that.
ducks. We got duck food. That's how it works, and they do a fantastic job at the animal shelter. National Night Out and our ice cream patrols. We held our first ever National Night Out, and we actually commandeered an ice cream truck this year. It was a hit. We're going to be doing something new in 2021 called Ice Cream Patrols. We got that coming up towards the end of the month, this month. Training education. I'm a firm believer in training on, if you give officers the right training, you give them the appropriate training, it leads to better decisions on the street. So we really have focused on our training and not just sending folks to any type of training, but sending them to the right training, the training that matters. This year, we put a strong emphasis on de-escalation, implicit bias, CIT. We got about 80% of our staff at the police department that are CIT trained. We got some new folks in the department that just due to COVID and those trainings not being available, we haven't been able to send them yet. Duty to intervene, we trained on that, and also other police reform topics, marijuana, everything else that kind of came our way during 2020. Detective Cox, he graduated at the Forensic Academy. That was a pretty extensive school in Richmond that trained him on the latest and greatest technology and crime scene processing protocol. Officer safety and wellness, this is one that we had to get this one right. And like the fire department, you heard from the fire department tonight, that officer safety, keep our officers safe and keeping them well during this time is so important. What we did within our department, we wanted to create a wellness work group. We did that. Lieutenant Mullins and Captain Swartzer, they are doing a fantastic job with that. We increased our chaplain program. We have another chaplain that signed on with us. Our peer support, we sent our entire wellness work group. There's about 5 members, both sworn and non-sworn, because our dispatchers, they're important too. They hear a lot of traumatic things on the phone, and they hear a lot of things on 911 calls, and they don't get that closure like an officer. So we wanted them to be a part of this initiative as well. So we sent them to training. Also, another thing that we did with our peer support and our wellness program is we've actually partnered. We used some grant funding that we got from DCJS for a partnership with Instill Mindfulness, and they're out of Floyd, and they're actually holding a 10-week program for officers on mindfulness and how to stay well and emotional wellness, and that's actually ongoing. I think they're in like week 6. New equipment, again, we talked about that, MDTs, e-ticketing, new patrol vehicles. I wish we could bring a patrol vehicle in here and just show you all the new technology and new things that's in that vehicle. They are state-of-the-art. It's much safer for an officer. It's much more efficient to do their job, and that overall helps our officers on the street.
Before you step off of that, could you go back one? I did want to talk a little more into the training and education piece. One of the best things that I thought we were able to do last year is when you and the sheriff and I sat down with the NAACP to have a discussion, and this was a significant area that we talked about, as well as recruitment. Can you talk a little bit about how that informed some of your process and how your continued conversations maybe participated in some of that? I appreciate the implicit bias and de-escalation pieces that are part of that. Can we talk a little bit more about what we've tried to do there, not just for us here, but for those who might be observing in the community?
Yeah, so we've done, again, everything that's mentioned on here, the de-escalation, the implicit bias, that all, kind of came from some of those conversations. In addition to that, with some of our promotional panels and some of our interview panels, we've actually, some of the questions involved in some of those panels, we've solicited input from community groups, community stakeholders, the NAACP
Right.
and others, and said, hey, what do you want to see out of a community servant, a police officer? What is a question that you would like to see us ask in this panel for new police officers, for a sergeant's candidate, for a lieutenant's candidate? I know that Deb Travis with the NAACP is very involved in our Chiefs Advisory Panel. We've had several discussions, her and Karen Jones, about ways that we can increase our recruitment, things that we can do. I know we're in the middle of a recruitment video that's going to be, try not to reveal all the surprises tonight, but recruitment video that's upcoming. We've had several planning meetings on that, but that's one way that we're trying to do that. But great working relationship with Deb and the NAACP, and they've certainly given us a lot of ideas moving forward.
You don't have to get really specific, because I know there's some things you can't share with us, but as you went through this process, were there any weaknesses that you felt like you all were able to define, and how did you address some of that as you went through? Because I think that's really key as we continue to evolve our education and training. I will add this. I mean, one of the things that we did as far as training and education is, when we send folks to training, we're paying for meals, we're paying for hotels. It's a pretty expensive endeavor. So for supervisors, we wanted to try to enhance leadership training for our folks that were sergeants, lieutenants, captains. So we partnered with FBI LEDA to come to Radford. And we actually are hosting a 3-part leadership education course, Supervisory Leadership Institute, a Command Leadership Institute, and an Executive Leadership Institute. And what that does is once those supervisors get all 3 of those courses, they're awarded what's called the Trilogy Award.
And we hosted our first one last month here in Radford, and then we're hosting the next one in July. We partnered with Radford University, and we hope to have that back on campus in July. We couldn't quite do it last month
Sure.
because of students and
Yeah.
everything like that, but July and then December. But that was one of the things, is to try to bring training here to not only better train our folks, but to reduce the cost for us as well. I think that was a
No,
weakness that we
that
identified.
sounds like exactly the way to go to get that resource, and we're so fortunate to have the FBI not too far away,
Right,
which is a
right,
good
right.
thing. With that, though, was there anything specific as a community, as we've sort of done the self-evaluation, and I know the community survey is part of that, that we've been able to identify that we said, this is an area where maybe residents don't feel as comfortable. Perhaps Sergeant Height is a perfect example of that, adding a specific officer for community policing, things like that. Have you found some things that you're like, this is something we really want to improve, and this is going to be our pathway to make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, Mayor, I think the community survey is a big part of that. We want to be responsive. If there is a area that we need to improve, we want to do that. Certainly Sergeant Height's new position and kind of community policing full-time was one of those. I think a lot of things we mentioned tonight were areas that, let's work smarter, not harder,
I like that.
with evidence. Perfect example. I mean, we were doing things kind of a stone tablet approach, and we went to a barcode scan, method, much easier. That was a weakness. There's a lot of different things as far traffic education, that huge with the sign. Let's use technology to our advantage. Let's use this sign. Let's, when we get these neighborhood complaints, let's deploy the sign in the neighborhood. Let's get better information about the complaint, and then we can deploy resources appropriately.
When
So-
you've used that Smart Shield sign, has that made a difference in the speed and then the issues that are related?
Absolutely.
Outstanding.
Yeah, it presents, we can pull various reports from it. It's a phenomenal piece of equipment.
Thank you.
So-
I don't mean to keep asking too many
No,
questions.
you're fine, you're fine. Community support, I put this up here, we had the business calendar that we did during 2020, but the reason I really put this slide up there is because 2020 was a challenging year. I mean, at certain points, certain weeks, we were having conversations with the fire chief, the city manager, other folks on the emergency team. We didn't know how we were going to get masks. We were talking about sanitizer. We were talking about if we're going to have enough gloves. The community showed up. I mean, we had people making masks for us. We had people bringing food. We had people doing all kinds of things. So here publicly, I'd like to say thank you. I mean, really, the Radford community showed up for us. And if you walk into the police department over there and there's a week that there's not food, pizza, cupcakes, cookies, I mean, that just shows the support for the police department here in this community. So one of the things that was pretty neat is the high school students, they made those masks for us there, so that was pretty
That's
decent.
awesome.
Again, building trust starts with that positive engagement, and in 2020, we had to do it a little differently. Sometimes it was wearing masks, sometimes it was doing things a little different, but you can see here on this picture, we had our picture of our ice cream patrol. We participated in the golf tournament. We helped out with several school drives. The polar plunge, prior to COVID, we read to the kids at Head Start. We did our Christmas parade, which was a huge hit. We helped with the Radford Fairlawn Daily Bread with the food delivery. And another thing that was really a way to change the narrative was this thing that we started with Caught in the Act. We had so many people in the community, that were like, oh, you're not wearing your mask. We had people taking pictures. We had all kinds of stuff going on. And Sergeant Height and I got together and said, how can we change this? How can we do something positive? So we drove around the university. I did it on a Saturday. It was kind of awkward. It was some awkward conversations. You jump out and say, hey, let me talk to you. And they're like, oh, me? For what? But we got out. We talked to people. We were like, hey, we appreciate what you're doing. You're social distance. You're wearing your mask. Hey, here's a T-shirt. Here's a coupon to Brickhouse Pizza. Thank you for doing the right thing. So that was a hit with the university students. I think I skipped a couple things there. Again, just some highlights. The senior delivery, it was just so many. Head Start, we did Coffee with a Cop. Bobcat backpacks, we had the teacher parade. Again, we talked about the food distribution. Something else that we tried to do for our businesses is they were going through a tough time back in April. We tried to do something for them to drive some business to them. So we did this restaurant bingo. We got some door prizes, and we actually had folks get bingo cards, and they actually had to get so many places on that bingo card, and then we drew for a prize, and we had a couple winners with that. We did a senior parade at the Radford Health and Rehab. We did a 2020 senior parade, DARE graduation at Bell Heath. Mayor, as you mentioned, following the murder of George Floyd back in June, we had, a couple discussions here with the NAACP, Sheriff Armentrout, and the mayor were involved in that. We talked to our faith-based leaders in the community back in July. In the community, I will tell you that we had several, and I think this goes along with community engagement, it goes along with trust. We had several, after the murder of George Floyd, we had several protests and walks and different events held here in the community. We didn't have a single arrest. We didn't have a single piece of property damaged. We didn't have a single event. We engaged with the leaders of those groups on the front end. We talked to them. We helped with traffic. We were present at those events with security and traffic needs. It all went smoothly. But again, I think the trust and the positive engagement that we had helped a lot with that. Virtual chats with the chief. We held, again, the school supply drives, the National Child Safety Seat Week, golf tournament, the National Night Out. Our Safe Exchange Zone was a huge hit in the parking lot there out front. We encourage folks to use that. The drug take-back days, the Halloween drive-boo, walk and talk with the chief at Wildwood, Santa's police cruise, the cruise through, the business calendar, and the 911 Santa tracker was something that our dispatchers put together for having kids call in and talk to the dispatchers. Our Chiefs Advisory Panel, again, all of the folks on this list serve on that panel. We have great discussion during our meetings. This is published on our website, and we are looking in the future. We've had some talks with RU Athletics. We've had talks with some other groups. We're potentially looking at expanding this just a little bit here in the future. Statistics, got some good news. 75% decrease in vehicle crashes compared to 2019. That was pretty significant. We had a 50% decrease in vehicle crashes involving alcohol. That went from 10 in 2019 to 5 2020. We had a 50% decrease in vehicle crashes involving injuries. That went from 6 to 3. And we had a 10% decrease in DUI arrests, 76 to 68. Overall crime for the city of Radford from 2019 to 2020, we decreased 5%. There's the total reportable incidents there on the right-hand side. We did have increases in theft, shoplifting, burglary, robbery, and embezzlement and false pretenses, and I really think a lot of that was just due to crimes of opportunity, just folks leaving their cars unlocked, sheds unlocked, things like that. So really, we encourage folks. I think Sergeant Heights put some stuff out about the 9 p.m. routine and locking your vehicles, keeping valuables out of sight, things of that. Just lock your doors. Lock your doors. Don't put your $1,000 on the front seat of your car, kind of thing. That's not the thing to do. Departmental. Yes.
Looking at the traffic data, we have to keep in mind that people weren't driving as much. People were staying home. How much do you attribute to those decreases being just related to COVID versus measures that you put in place, and do you anticipate being able to continue these trends?
So it's interesting because I think on the state level, and I don't remember when this study came out, but what we saw on the state level was that speed-related crashes and fatalities, I think, in the state were actually on the rise.
Wow.
Because of COVID. And I think what, kind of the talk is that the roads weren't as congested, there weren't as many people on the road, so, speed and accidents were happening more. So I was a little, surprised, honestly, to see this much of a decrease. Again, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to look into that crystal ball and tell if this time next year we'll be able to say we have that much of a decrease. I hope with our education, our enforcement, everything that we're doing, it'll still stay on the
Well, certainly, if there's a rise in state levels and then we're on the decline, that's a
good
indicator. That's
Yep.
a great indicator. Wonderful.
Also, we had our students weren't here as well.
That's true.
Yeah, so not only was there COVID impacted, but there's also students left in March-ish timeframe of last year as well, so.
Very true.
Yeah. Is there any way to benchmark that number with 2008 in terms of, lack of work, both benchmark years, 2008, because 2008 we saw a recession, and we would have saw less people on the road as well. I'd be curious to see how that number matches up with that 2008 benchmark.
I can certainly find that out and let you know.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. Departmental data, again, this is all information that's contained in the annual report that, and what I failed to mention in the beginning too, this annual report's published on our website. We have all of our annual reports published on our website, so it's available to the public. Internal affairs data, we had 2 complaints last year, one external, one internal. One of those complaints was a sustained complaint. Our bias-based policing, we had a complaint received for that. It was fully investigated and found to be unfounded. Use of force, we had 25 incidents where force had to be used. There were 16 that involved weaponless or physical force. And what that means is just simple control holds. You know, we had to take somebody's hand and put them in handcuffs. No tasers, no batons, nothing besides a weaponless technique. There was no complaints of excessive force received during 2020. All incidents were administratively reviewed all the way up through the chief of police and complied with policy. And this is, I think this is important too. This gives a little bit of perspective. In 2020, we had 999 custodial arrests, and that means where we had to physically take somebody into custody, they were placed in handcuffs. That doesn't include mental health calls. That doesn't include traffic stops where there was no custodial arrest. That does include, you know, citizen encounters, you know, for other reasons. 999 times we took people into custody. In only 2% of those encounters, the physical arrests, there was some type of force that had to be used. So that's a relatively low number compared to, you know, I don't know right offhand what the national average is, but I can tell you that that's a good number, you know, around 2%. Vehicle pursuits, we had 5 vehicle pursuits in 2020. They were all reviewed and found to be compliant with policy. And in 2020, which I think is, you know, a great thing here at the end, we researched donations, grants. You know, our drug take-back box that we have next door was courtesy of New River Valley Community Services. Our department, we had about $200,000 worth of funding in 2020. So, 6 key areas for 2021. Number 1 on the list is people. People are our most important resource, and I'm happy to report here today, we are full staffed. We have everybody in place. We have a couple folks in training, but on paper, we are full staffed in our communications center, animal control, and our police department. Again, recruitment, even though we're full staffed, we still recruit. We do continuous recruitment. Retain and invest in our employees. Again, our wellness initiatives, we got to get that right. We got to take care of our people. It's a tough time right now in our profession. We got to take care of them. Equipment.
Before
Yes.
you move off of that, you know, one of the things we spent a lot of time talking about is finding non-majority members to join the police force. Can you talk a little bit about how you've tried to work with that? Because that's a very tricky thing, that this is not, we're going to identify someone by certain demographic characteristics. We're obviously looking for the best person for the role, but yet we want to be the kind of department that all different types of people that look like our community participate in. Can you talk about that piece when you talk about recruitment a little bit?
Sure, yeah, and that's one of the things that with our recruitment video, we're really trying to focus on that. But we've had talks, I know that Karen Jones and Deb with the NAACP, we've had extensive conversations about that. I know in our last Chiefs Advisory Panel meeting, that topic came up about our minority recruitment. It's definitely not only our department. This is a struggle for law enforcement agencies across the nation. One of the ideas that was brought up from our Chiefs Advisory Panel last meeting was actually to possibly get youth in the schools involved, get them interested in law enforcement, maybe the middle school, the high school. So we're actually working on an initiative with the school. I know Montgomery County has something called Books and Badges. It's a program they have there. We're looking at do something similar here. Some departments have like a cadet program or an explorer program. I know my agency that I came from, we had that, and it was a huge recruitment tool to get folks interested in law enforcement early. So we're trying, we're looking at different ways. If anybody has any suggestions, we're certainly open to them.
Well, I have an idea that might be something we could explore, and I wonder if any kind of scholarship type program. Now, again, this is something that would have to be built and be supportive, whether it be through New River Community College or through something like Radford University, where we've had folks in the criminal justice program who've then later come to work for the department. I don't know if something like that can be an incentive, because I know that's how many programs diversify their applicant pool, is to provide scholarships for folks within those categories so that you bring more people to the table, essentially.
Absolutely.
Is that something that's worked in other communities as far as you know, or is that something you could explore?
I'm not aware of any other communities that are doing anything like
Okay.
that, but we have a university right here in our backyard.
Sure.
It's worth a try. You know,
Okay.
we're definitely open to it. Like I said, a couple of our members of our panel are engaging with the schools right now on
I think that's
trying to set
great.
up something, so.
Well, and, you know, I don't want to make that the only issue we stand on, but I know that's something that's been brought up multiple times to me by members of the community, that they want to feel like their departments, both police, fire, EMS, everything,
Sure.
looks like their community, and that they feel comfortable in that environment, that they see people like themselves in those roles. So I appreciate everything you're doing with that, and I think the more we can do there, the better off we are.
And that helps with trust, you know, building that trust as
Absolutely.
well. If you have a department that's representative of your community, I think that's key in building trust. Again, wellness equipment and keeping folks motivated. You know, it's just a tough time right now. Just keeping that motivation up, and I think is a big part. Policy, again, things are changing fast. Laws are changing. They used to just change in July. Now they're March 1st, March 31st. We've had laws change, you know, 3 times in, you know, less than 24 hours here in the last year. So that's been tough. Best practices, reform priorities. Again, good policy, following best practices, that's risk management. That's protection for us. It's protection for the officer. It's protection for the city as a whole. So I'm a big person on policy. Training, again, good training leads to better decisions on the street, enhance our leadership training for our supervisors. Accountability, we're going to set the bar high. We're going to you know, follow accreditation standards. We're going to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the right reasons. Technology, work smarter, more efficient. We're going to, you know, technology and policing is constantly changing. We try to keep up, you know, the best we can, and then funding obviously is an issue there at times. And then last but not least, community. We can't be successful without our community. Positive engagement, again, helps build that trust that we want. The survey results, we are going to be responsive to these survey results. I know that they're coming in. Please share that link. The QR code is nice. I didn't know that you could just click that thing with your phone and go to it, but it's a cool way to get to it. Please encourage folks to do that. CEO accessibility. If people need to talk, if they got a concern, tell them to come down and talk to me. You know, there's not a lot of layers. I don't hide behind other members of the command staff. Have them come give me a chat, talk to me. Website, social media, continue work with our Chiefs Advisory Panel, and then again, continue with our 21st century policing pillars and making sure we're following those. And I'll take any questions.
And I know we've been asking already, but for those that haven't been heard from, Forrest, do you have any questions or thoughts?
No questions per se. I just think it's really fitting that you're able to give this presentation during, or as we talk about National Police Week today. And really, I just want to express an immense amount of gratitude to you, to your team, to the whole department. You, as you hinted at, you stepped into a new job, and without really realizing it, at a time that was just about the hardest possible time you could have picked. And I think you've served in the role honorably and admirably, and I'm very grateful to have you as a part of Radford, and can only speak highly of the work that RCPD does for us, so thank you.
And I can tell you, just to go in line with that, you know, without the team that I have in place, it certainly wouldn't have been possible. So, you know, I have the privilege and the honor of standing here presenting this, but it's the folks next door, truly, so.
Naomi, what do you have?
Well, you know, I want to start by saying we get updates throughout the year, right? You'll send us, you know, we know about, you know, you're doing this event or that event, but as you present all of this today, compiled, it is remarkable how much you have accomplished in the course of 1 year. And as Forrest has mentioned, a very difficult year. So thank you for all of that you have done. It's very clear that you are making a very concerted effort to really be out within the community and be there for us, and so we are very appreciative for all of that. One thing that I do want to ask that I haven't already asked, you keep mentioning this, you know, the traffic shield sign as a piece of equipment that is allowing you to do your job really well. And it strikes me that you all have sort of mentioned things that have been helpful before. Councilwoman Foster was very, she really pushed getting the e-tickets available for every car. That was something that she really championed and I know was helpful. Are there other things that we as a council should be aware of as equipment that are going to allow you to do your jobs better? You know, specific things that are going to help keep you safe or allow you to be more efficient that may be stretch goals for now, you know, that we can't really do right now, but we should be aware of and keep our eyes on for the right opportunity.
Yeah, and you know, that's something that's constantly changing. As I mentioned, technology, we're always trying to look at the latest and greatest and how it applies to us here in Radford and how it's going to impact our department and be able to be used in our community. I can tell you one of the things that, you know, with new law changes and things like that, that's going to be coming up for us is our canine program. We got, you know, one dog that's a tracking dog currently. I know that Ms. Foster brought that up recently. We really are going to try to research that and really look at what's happening and make sure that, I guess, the legal landscape is kind of steady before we jump into, and I know you understand that, to make sure everything is kind of stable before we jump into, you know, purchase of other dogs and looking at other dogs. But that's certainly something that we're going to need to look at going forward. I've talked to the city manager about, you know, definitely a replacement plan on some of our vehicles. Our detective division, you know, as far as vehicles and some equipment there, I think is something that we're going to have to look at going forward. But really with this community survey, that's one part of what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do as an agency is to develop a 5-year strategic plan. And some of what you're talking about is going to be in that plan. And that's going to include discussions with our Chiefs Advisory Panel, community survey input, and also an internal working group. We've identified an internal working group that we're going to, you know, be talking to them about, hey, what do you see our department doing in the next 5 years? Where do we need to be 5 years from now, a year from now, 2 years from now? So some of that, I think, is going to happen over the next 6 to 12 months. We're going to be talking about that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
You have anything else?
Nope.
Jesse, do you have anything?
I do. I was just going to say that Chief Dotson is a little bit more diplomatic than I am on some of their needs. I guess I'm a little bit more forceful in regards to the canines, for example, because as I am aware, the changes legally with marijuana has made it that where our dogs are really unable to be utilized, not to mention the fact that they're aging, and with or without this is still going to be a priority. So you can't untrain them to seek out marijuana. So I know you're saying you want to wait to kind of get ahead of things. I know when I was on my last ride out, we needed a dog. I mean, we had a gentleman that supposedly had a weapon and was running through the neighborhoods. And having a tracking dog in that instance, you know, when you're running through an alley and you see kids play toys sitting out there, it becomes very real very quickly to be in that environment. So in regards to the canines, if we, in an optimum world, could secure canines that did not have the marijuana tracking, but they were trackers, and they still had the ability to track the other drugs that I don't see heroin anytime soon being legalized, for example.
At least I hope not.
Right,
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. I mean, we're going to have to hedge our bets on some of this because everything is fluid. But in utilizing what we know now in some God-given sense, why would we not pursue now the purchase and training of a canine dog or two to replace the ones that we know we really can't utilize now, other than budgetary, which that's something that council can always, you know, look at and discuss.
Right. So you're right, and I think what we're looking at going forward, right now, currently our dogs are single-purpose dogs. So 3 of our dogs can only find narcotics.
Right.
So I think going forward, maybe what we're looking at, because if those dogs were dual trained, if they could track and they could find drugs, that we would be in a good position right now.
Right.
We'd just say, hey, don't worry about using your nose for drugs. Use your nose to find people.
Except for their aging.
They're aging. They are
And one is getting PT
11,
right
yeah,
now,
11,
I
12
think.
years old. So they're aging. So that's definitely a factor in it. But going forward, that's one of the things as we're kind of looking at this and looking at the right choices is do we go with a dual-purpose dog versus a single-purpose dog? Are we looking at a dog can find narcotics and track, or are we still going to go with the single-purpose ability of a dog? So those are things. Another thing that we got to take into consideration too is this challenge that we're facing with our canines and the new legal mandates. This is going to be faced by a lot of departments across the state. So we're going to be looking at supply and demand of those dogs and kind of the right time to
So
kind
how
of
do
hit
we
the
get
market.
ahead of it? So if we kind of know that there's a dichotomy here in choosing the dogs, like, I don't want to wait. Like, I'm telling you, be in that alley, chasing down a gentleman that has potential drugs he's dropping in yards with a gun, and I don't want to hesitate. If, I'm always saying, if there are easy pieces we can move to keep you safe and the officers and the community, it's a small investment for the lives that we can potentially save. So,
Absolutely.
like, just to put a little fire under you, when will you make that determination? I don't want to not get in the pipeline quick, and then we have 3 years behind us. To me, let's get in this pipeline sooner rather than later while we see the trend is changing statewide. Sorry, I know you're like,
I think it's fair to say that we're probably going to be diving into this pretty deep before the next 6 months or so, for sure. I know that, I've already had some preliminary conversations with the Commonwealth Attorney about our utilizations in court and kind of his opinion on it. I've talked to, our canine folks within our department, talked to the captain that supervises our canines, have also talked to a couple different canine trainers. Another factor we look at is, kind of that transition of getting a dog. Do we look at a puppy that's a green dog? Do we look at getting a dog that's fully trained? There's a lot of different considerations that we have, but I agree with, I'm a canine guy. I'm a former canine handler, so I can tell you that I'm very much pro canine and definitely want to do it sooner than later, but I want to make sure we're stable on our footing and research properly.
With that in mind, what timeline do you think you have for your 5-year strategic plan development? Do you think it'll be this time next year before you have something ready to bring us, or December, or what are you thinking?
Probably 6, 8 months.
6, 8 months. So I think that goes in line very nicely with that, to have that
but
strategic
sooner
plan.
than 5 years.
Oh, yeah. No.
I don't want this to be a stretch goal for us or the department. I think council, is supportive of these measures. I think they have enough sense they can picture the situation that we're drawing here. So I'm just saying, you have my full support because I have seen just one specific incident that I know a canine could have made all the difference. And so to me, in this instance, you have my full support, and I think most of council, is supportive as well. So I don't want to hesitate. I know we need a 5-year plan. I would like this to be really not a stretch goal, but like, you have my full support personally, and I will advocate as much as I can to give you that support and the funding that's required for your safety, quite frankly.
We appreciate that, and you have my word. If this takes longer than 4 years, 3 years, then you need to call me.
Look,
to the
I'm going
front
to
of the
find
room.
you in 3 months.
Okay.
Look, I have you on my calendar. I'm going to see where we are in 3 months, but I know
I
you
think
and I
Jesse
talked
wants to
about this.
foster this puppy as well.
Oh, boy.
Anything else?
I do. So I'm going to throw you a softball. So one of the things that I really like, one of our programs, and I know with COVID it was a little odd last year, was our bike policing. It was a great way to get our officers out from the cars into the community. I know when we were having community events, I would see them there, and they would always have, folks coming up and talking to them. And I think it was probably as good for the officers, because I heard a lot of thank yous for your service, as it was for the community to see that these are approachable human beings that care about them. Where are we at? I know we had several bikes, but it was a lot of pieces and parts that we were trying to kind of put together, and we had some of the officers trying to repair them. Where are we at with the bicycles?
So we have folks that work on our bikes in the back. I do know that we probably could use a bike or two, for sure. That's another surprise that I'm going to reveal to you. You're going to see some more bike patrol here in the
Good.
next couple of months. I know we just put something out asking for folks to sign up for that assignment coming up, so.
I'm glad to hear that.
stay
And I
tuned.
can say, from seeing some of the bikes, they were in repair, and because it hasn't been a component that had been leaned on a lot in the past, I could tell you that there was some work, and it was such a nice extension of your guys' service to the community. So I'm glad to hear that. Ice Cream Social, we talked about it briefly. Do you want to give the date to the community on the next Ice Cream Social?
Yes, so we are starting our ice cream patrol this month on May the 26th. Our first ice cream patrol, we're going to commandeer the ice cream truck again. We're going to be at Rustic Village. Our hope this year is to kind of bounce that around in the community. So we may start at Rustic Village. I know Fairfax Village is kind of on the list. I think Willow Woods is another location. There's several different locations. I know Sergeant Height is setting up a planning meeting with the ice cream truck, and we're going to kind of lay out a schedule for the summer months of where and when we are going to be
There's a
present.
good location on Wadsworth.
Wadsworth, okay.
Our community definitely needs
Definitely
one on
needs ice
You can
Wadsworth.
bike up the road to Rustic Village.
That's
It
right.
works.
I will, I am.
First
gonna
she
come
gets
to
the
that.
dog, now she gets her ice cream.
What else
We're
do
on
want?
to you.
All right, one last thing, and
Okay.
it's another hardball. And you and I discussed it. I know I've had the conversation with the mayor and a couple other members of council, and I know you're kind of at the place where I know you and David are talking about it, and you're in the process, but I just wanted to bring this up with council. So when I'm doing the write-outs, I'm always driving them absolutely insane with questions. And unmarked cars, they've been a bit of a concern in some local communities, and David and I have talked about that, and the concern of unmarked cars and them pulling over folks. And again, we know we have a community that has had some very bad experiences with that. I was asking, it was actually it was one of our detectives, I was asking him about one of the cars, and then they discussed several of the cars that our detectives are using currently that are unmarked. Couple of things. One is, can you tell council a little bit about the couple of the cars that need replaced that I don't know if the detective ever went back and spoke with you about it, but there was a couple of cars specifically that had a lot of miles on them, and it was going to be as expensive to keep them up probably as it is to maybe find an alternative.
Yeah, so a couple of them are in pretty bad shape. They're high miles. Now, the good thing with our detective vehicles is they're not running for a 12-hour shift. They're not run quite as hard as some of our patrol vehicles, so we are able to leave them in the fleet a little longer. I will tell you that, we do have one detective vehicle that I think's showing up on our fleet as a present vehicle that we have that's not serviceable. I think it's got a bad engine that's been replaced a couple times, and it's just not good. But our detectives are doing a great job kind of holding together with duct tape and things to keep them together.
Can you give them
to
an
be
idea
honest.
of the years and mileage if you know, approximate?
2 or 3 of them are above 150,000.
I think one was a 2004.
2004. There's some 2010s there. I think the Explorer that's not running anymore is probably a 2008.
So my point in this, one thing that I noticed was we were barely limping these along. I was concerned about that because I do believe that if we don't be proactive, we're going to end up in a bit of a crisis situation in regards to the unmarked cars. Now, there's always, I think we have to talk about the fact that there's a lot of concern right now with unmarked cars and a lot of good reason. What is the policy that you have on the utilization of unmarked cars?
So our unmarked cars, currently the only unmarked cars that we have in our patrol division are our canines. We have 3 canine vehicles that are unmarked. Everything else is a marked patrol vehicle. We don't use, unmarked vehicles for regular traffic enforcement. Obviously, if a detective's out and they see an emergent situation, a DUI driver, they see somebody run off the road, they see somebody going 80 miles an hour on Main Street, they're going to stop them in an unmarked vehicle.
Why do we need unmarked vehicles?
For our detectives,
So
there's.
why would a detective need an unmarked car opposed to a marked car?
So, kind of a lot of different reasons, a lot of different, surveillance, a lot of different operations that we do require an unmarked vehicle. Let's say, I'll give you a perfect example. We have a house break-in. Maybe they need to conduct surveillance on that house to see the folks that are coming back breaking in that neighborhood. It's kind of hard to do that with a black and white patrol vehicle that says police plastered on the side. Another example may be a sensitive case that we have. Maybe there's a victim that we need to transport to a location, maybe back to a crime scene to show that victim. We want to respect that victim's rights and dignity, and we wouldn't want to be transporting them around in a marked patrol vehicle. So we would do that in an unmarked vehicle to kind of give them a little bit of privacy as well.
Well, and I know, I'm jumping the gun on you a little bit because I know that this is, you said you guys are in communication, and I know that, but I just felt like because I was there and I was looking at the cars, and I am very transparent with council when I see an issue that I think can affect your safety and your ability to be effective, that we need to discuss it. I think we're always going to have to keep, close to our minds that there are a lot of concerns with the unmarked cars. So of course, we just have to be conscientious always about how those are utilized. But I also think there's an opportunity with some potential funding coming up where vehicles might be able to be purchased. And this would be something that I would probably advocate for at this juncture. Again, I mean, I don't mean to just spring this on you, but it was some of my observations, and I always come back good, bad, or ugly, and I let council know what I'm seeing. I wasn't pleased with the looks of those cars, and I would say, council members, if you want to go see them for yourselves, I'm sure they would line them up or push them so you could get to them.
They're doing a fantastic job keeping them running. They really are. I mean, I will say, your department does, as most of ours do, sometimes, with lack of resources and funding, you do an amazing job to be creative with what we have. But, to me, I just don't, I don't feel like we have the luxury of being creative when it has to do with your safety and the safety of our community. So that's all I'm going to say about that, which I know was a lot, sorry, but it was something I felt like council need to be aware of. All right, I'm done.
Hey, well, there you go.
There you go.
Well, I am going to, this is a poker terminology, I'm going to see Jesse's personal commitment and raise it by giving you my 4-year-old dog till you can train. He is excellent at finding treats in the house.
Sold.
So,
I've heard about
yeah,
that dog,
so
I don't know.
Yeah, he's excellent at finding treats,
Yeah.
and he's excellent at finding his way out of my backyard. So there you go.
There
So-
you go. Well,
but-
can't beat that.
Exactly. So I just wanted to personally thank, Chief Dotson I wrote a couple words down. Loved your presentation. I wrote 2 words down: intentional and forward-thinking leadership. That was very self-evident. I think Councilman Huntington spoke to it earlier about how much you've accomplished as an organization over the past year in a COVID environment, which is huge. So, and then thank you, Sergeant Height, for your work in the community. I've actually seen you out there in the community, so I do thank you for that personally. And one of the things that I wrote down, you had mentioned diversity and your diversity and equity recruiting tactics, and you mentioned the Chiefs Advisory Council. And you mentioned before that wanting to reach out to younger individuals of diverse backgrounds to sort of educate them early on in terms of the relationship between the community and the police department. So have you ever looked at having a youth version of the Chiefs Advisory Council that sort of leverages the relationship at that younger age in terms of the conversations, what can the police do to enhance the relationship with those individuals at a younger age before they, do not decide to become police officers? Or have you ever given that any thought? Or
I can't say that that's a surprise I'm going to reveal to you, but I love the idea, and I'll probably call Rob in the morning to
Okay,
check
good
on
deal.
getting that started. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I love that. Yeah, and then so the other one is police sports leagues. Most cities I've lived in, they have PAL leagues, right, for basketball, baseball, what have you. Another possible tactic to really help ingrain yourself with the youth of this community in terms of really benefiting, getting that tie-in and that relationship with the youth in the Bradford Police at an early age versus, later in life. So just a few tactics that I would like to suggest to you as well.
I like it.
And then my dog, so I will let you know
We'll
when,
talk
and where,
after the
when and
meeting.
where to pick him up. Okay, just know that. So.
Thank you very much. Chief, thank you for everything that you've done this year. I did want to mention just a couple of things, and I'll say ditto to everyone with all that you've done. We spent a lot of time talking over the last 12 months, particularly last summer, as we were sort of struggling with what our community response should be in the wake of some of the national and statewide unrest. We spent a lot of time talking about Sergeant Height and that position and how we could best support her effort with the community. And I think so many things stand out in my mind as highlights of the year because of those things. Looking at the holiday activities that happened, I think those were so wonderful. I remember last summer collecting school supplies. I remember you all working with local grassroots organizations. And in fact, one of my very favorite things that you mentioned that was so outstanding, the Caught in the Act program, I know that evolved out of one of the conversations. Ms. Hamden, I think, actually mentioned that to you there. I would love to see us continue that Caught in the Act program even beyond the masks. That helped us so much as we struggled as a council with, should we have a local mask mandate? Should people be given tickets? How does this work? And that program in itself was a positive way to say, hey, you're doing a great job, thank you. Can I give you a gift certificate? Can I reward you for that piece? That's a wonderful model for us to move forward with that I think could benefit us in so many ways, whether it be, again, with some of our youth or with citizens who are just doing a really terrific job, sort of community building, things along that line. That Caught in the Act may be an ongoing thing if that works for you guys, because I think that it's cute and it's fun, it's very social media oriented.
Yep.
But bottom line is it is a show of respect, I think, for so many people that say, hey, I do the right thing most of the time, and when I mess up, then that's when the police talk to me. But having that conversation when they are doing the right thing is so wonderful. And you know, when we sat down to talk about the role of our department and the role of our chief, one of the things that was universal was community policing, trying to better integrate our police force with our community and the hardworking officers that do so much, being engaged on a regular basis. Thank you for all the work you've done this year to make that happen. We do appreciate that. Anything else, council? All right, thank you, Chief. You're off the hot seat. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Sergeant Height. We appreciate that.
I can come back out for ride-out, though, right? Okay, just want to make sure I'm not on the no-fly list,
Exactly,
you know?
Van.
Oh, they're only going to put you in new vehicles.
I
Exactly.
know.
Puppies in the
I
back
know.
seat.
Puppies
I
under.
want that.
Okay, at this time, we are going to open our public hearing for ordinance 1751, which is regarding the city code with our excise tax on the sale or use of cigarettes in the city of Radford. If anyone is here to speak on that public hearing, you're more than welcome to come forward. I will open the floor for any comments that folks have to make. Seeing no comments from the floor this evening, I do have a letter from a citizen, and then we did receive another letter that I'll reference as well. And I do want to read this. Members of council received a letter on April 25th from Bill Stone, who is the proprietor of a business here in the city of Radford, Bucko's Pantry at 1700 West Main Street. Dear council members, please note my objections to increased taxes on cigarettes or other tobacco-related products sold in the city of Radford. I own Bucko's Pantry at 1700 West Main Street, and during this difficult time in retail with COVID, employee shortages, hikes in the wages mandated by the state government, and the weakened economy in general, I believe increased taxes would only motivate the citizens of Radford to go outside the city to shop. Retail business in general is very difficult these days, evidenced by the amount of locally owned businesses that have dwindled in the past few decades and have been replaced by national chains. As a loyal taxpayer, please consider the hardship this would impose on the small business community in our city. Thank you for your service and consideration, Bill Stone. We also received a letter on May the 6th from the National Association of Tobacco Outlets. And this is from Thomas Bryant. He just wanted to point out that additional taxes might magnify some of the economic crisis for our retailers, that they have lost sales of products by federal regulation, that their stimulus funds help negate the need for resources and things along that line. The one thing I did want to bring up is that it would impact the city differently in that he stated that we would be the only locality looking at this, and we are simply not. As many localities in the region are looking at that. So, having said that, is there last call for anyone that wants to bring something from the floor this evening for our public hearing? Hearing none, I'm actually going to read the ordinance, then I'm going to mention something with the city manager before we move forward. Ordinance number 1751, an ordinance amending sections 35-482 of the Radford City Code to increase the excise tax on the sale or use of cigarettes in the city of Radford, Virginia. Whereas Virginia Code 58.1-3830 and 58.1-3840 authorize the City of Radford, Virginia, to impose an excise tax on the sale or use of cigarettes within the city, and whereas Virginia Code 58.1-3832 authorizes the city to provide by ordinance for the administration and enforcement of any tax on the sale or use of cigarettes, and whereas Section 35-482 on the Code of Ordinances of the City of Radford, Virginia imposes an excise tax on the sale of cigarettes within the city equivalent to 15 cents on each pack or package of cigarettes, and whereas effective July 1st, 2021, Virginia Code 58.1-3830 authorizes the city to impose a tax on the sale or use of cigarettes at a maximum rate of 2 cents per cigarette sold. Whereas, after notice and public hearing as required by law, the Radford City Council has determined it appropriate and in the best interest of the city to amend Section 35-482 of the City Code to increase the tax on the sale of cigarettes from 15 cents on each pack or package of cigarettes to 40 cents on each pack or package of cigarettes. Now, therefore, be it ordained by the Council of the City of Radford that Section 35-482 of the City Code is amended as follows. Levied the amount tax additional to other taxes. In addition to all other taxes of every kind now or hereafter imposed by law, there is hereby levied and imposed by the city an excise tax on the sale of cigarettes equivalent to 40 cents on each pack or package of cigarettes. The tax shall be paid by the seller if not previously paid and collected in the manner and at the time provided for in this article, provided that the tax payable for each pack or package of cigarettes sold within the city shall be paid but once. The tax hereby levied shall not apply to free distribution of sample cigarettes in packages containing 5 or fewer cigarettes. State law reference. Similar provisions, Code of Virginia, 55.1-3830, 55.1-3840, and 58.1-3832. And in accordance with Section 2.14 of the city's charter, this ordinance would take effect 30 days after its passage. So, having stated all of that and heard from citizens, Council, what are your thoughts?
I'm comfortable with the ordinance as is. I think we've discussed it and debated it and went back and forth with our options, and I'm very comfortable as is. And again, just to say that, you know, we are not doing this in isolation. The communities around us are also looking at making an incremental change. So I don't see that the negative impact on our businesses should be necessarily greater than anyone else in our surrounding area. And can you remind me, when is the last time that this particular tax was raised? 2004. So, I mean, I think it's in line. So I'm very comfortable with ordinance number 1751 as stands.
I concur. When you look at the ability for the retailer to sell through their existing stamps, roughly 6 to 12 month supply, the hardship, of course, is spread out over time, so you're not looking at an immediate negative impact to the seller, to the retailer. So I definitely concur with this ruling for ordinance 1751 in terms of raising it from 15 cents to 40 cents. I think it's appropriate, and I think that the retailers do, like the individual who voices concern, I do hear his concern, but they do have up to 6 to 12 months of sell-through based upon the stamps that are in issue currently.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
I would just say that in light of the fact that 15 cents is one of the lowest rates in the state, we would be very well justified to increase the rate even in isolation. But we're not even doing that at this point. We're really lining up to be with our neighbors as well. So I agree.
Yeah, I would just ask David if there's any follow-up on, I guess, follow through in the neighboring communities where they are at in the process at this point. I know it's been a couple weeks now since we last talked about it, so.
You know who's looking at what?
At this point, I don't, there may be some public hearings tonight, I'm not sure.
Okay.
State legislation, the counties can have it, Christiansburg, Blacksburg, towns, and County Pulaski, and Narrows, all have the tax now, just like Radford. Towns all came in at the same time the city did, so the counties were ones that are going to catch up, and everybody's looking at about this rate for their ordinances.
Okay.
Timing would be my only issue on this. I would prefer that, while I know Christiansburg and Blacksburg are already substantially higher than we are, rather than it going to effect while others are still making that consideration, how would council feel about setting a date, say a September 1st date or something along that line, which would allow our sister communities to maybe catch up to our progress here with what we're doing? We know that it's going to be likely 6 to 12 months beyond that before that would take effect. Would that be a reasonable compromise with some of the things that are being brought up so that we're not too far ahead of the game, that there's 2 or 3 months where there might be that imbalance where others have not yet adopted?
Well, I think given the fact that that retailers have roughly 6 to 12 months of sell-through available in terms of current stamps, we would not realize the revenue from this increase in cigarette tax until 12 months down the line. So I think it's reasonable to set a September date.
And
Would
I
that
think
be-
that we may all be in a similar position where we're all waiting to see who's going to go first.
Right.
And I think one thing that this council said, and we were pretty emphatic on, is that we'll gauge this. If we see that our businesses are being harmed unequivocally, then that's something that we would have to look at and revisit. I'm still comfortable with it as is. I do feel like maybe some of the communities were all sort of dancing around each other to see who's going to show their hand first, if you will. And I am perfectly comfortable with this ordinance as is right now, with the understanding that we would continue to review it and just keep our finger on the pulse of our businesses to make sure that they're not losing 50% of their business over a 25-cent increase per pack. I don't think that is viable, to be quite honest. I don't think we would see that. I think we have to be open to measuring it and making sure, but I'm comfortable with it now, quite frankly. So,
Thoughts?
I'm inclined to agree with Councilwoman Foster. I won't add to that comment, but I'm inclined to agree.
I mean, I could honestly go either way, so I don't feel particularly strongly about either date.
The only reason I say that is this is a little bit of a moving target right now, and while we think everybody else is going to move forward, that would give us some additional time rather than if, say, some of the surrounding counties chose to say, let's hold off for 6 months or a year. That gives us time to evaluate. I get what we're saying, that we could go back if suddenly our retailers are experiencing significant loss, but I don't think it hurts us to wait just a little bit longer. I mean, we can go on and deal with the business portion of it now, but if we set say a September 1st date, that gives us a couple additional months to sort of see what everybody else is doing, and we could recorrect if necessary, if we find that something's different or out of line. I mean, do we feel like that's a reasonable approach for this? Because I've struggled with it a little bit back and forth, simply because there's going to be significant discussion, but it very well could be that some of the neighboring communities say, let's hold off for a year and see what happens. And again, I'd take it seriously when I hear from a retailer, when I hear from other folks who say, I'm a little bit afraid because of this going on. So that would be my compromise on this, that we do move forward now so that we make something happen, but that we just set that start date as, say, September 1st.
Well, I think a couple of variables have to be considered. And David, so are we looking at continue to issue the current stamps through September? Because from a retail perspective, are they going to stockpile, given the fact that we're going to allow them to sell through their existing inventory of retail stamps, of cigarette tax stamps, if they're allowed to continue to purchase 15-cent stamps as is, as a retailer, I'd be more inclined to stockpile those 15-cent stamps, knowing that I have the ability to sell through my stamps over time. So I'm with Councilman Foster, with Councilman Height and Councilman Huntington. It's 6 on one hand, half dozen on the other, because if they have the ability as is to sell through their existing stamps, and we know that it's roughly 6 to 12 months, it's really a moot point. So.
Well, that's a business decision. If someone wanted to pre-purchase something, I really don't have issue with that. I mean, they're within the letter of the law.
perhaps we just put it to a vote at this point.
Do we want to do that on a start date? Okay, I'll make a motion that we adopt the ordinance with a start date of September 1st. Do we have a second on that motion? Not hearing a second, then I will make a motion that we adopt the ordinance that shall take effect 30 days after passage.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Can you do a roll call vote, Ms. Wilder?
Yes.
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 Yes. and then we will revisit this next time for our second reading. That is all that we have on our agenda, as we don't have any additional new business. David, do you have anything for us this evening?
Just a couple things. Tonight on the way home, the senior banners for the class of 2021, the RHS senior banners are up on West Main Street. I think they have a parade on the 20th, Thursday the 20th, I think is the date, maybe 5 or 6, double check the time on that. Also, the American flags and armed forces banners are up on the bridge. So that's one of our goals, to have those up before Memorial Day, and they stay up through Veterans Day. So that's in place. Paving procurement is out. Expect those bids back next week, and y'all should be able to award, hoping everything comes in good, award those on the May 24th meeting. And then I think other than that, the water plant got the gold award for
Good news.
water service treatment. So really pleased. I think it's our fifth consecutive on that. Jenny, did you want to say a little bit about the marathon this weekend? and its success?
Sure. Oh, wow. I'm
Please do.
very
Take your
loud when
mask
I
off,
talk
too,
into
if
one
you
of
want.
these. Yeah, so this weekend, the Highlander half was held in 5K in the city. I think it was a welcomed event, sort of just a start to a community event, right? Getting out there, it's been probably about a 6 to 9 month planning process involving community members, police, fire, and then the university as well. And so I emailed Casey for final numbers, but I think she might be out today, which she is deserving, the race director. But I think the half had right around 100 in-person runners, and they had virtual runners too. And the 5K at one point, she told me was a little over 100. Naomi ran it. She might be able to, I don't know if you can ballpark.
It looked
From,
like 100.
from as far back as I was, it was really hard to tell.
Yeah, so she was so far in front of everybody, she couldn't tell who was behind her. That's what she meant. No, but yeah, so it was a great event. I think a really good course, and the course had to be changed a couple times based off of being held on campus and not, and just an overall community effort as normal. So hopefully next year the food truck rodeo maybe can be back with that again, and we'll see.
Well, and I think it's an important thing for us to talk about, because as we talk about sports tourism, as we talk about activities in many communities, marathons or other road races are significant events that bring people from many, many places. Historically, we've had a significant number of Radford University alumni, but also regional people. And then normally our food truck rodeo would have taken place as the grand finale of that event. This year we weren't able to do that, although this fall the food truck rodeo will be coming soon, so that's a good thing. But I think it's something for us to keep in mind as we look at our tourism piece, as we look at the recreation tourism as a significant component as we move forward. That's a big thing. Anything else from City Manager? All right, thank you. Vice Mayor?
I will keep it brief this evening. This is also National Nurses Week, and I think that it is only deserving that we all honor them this week, as well as our wonderful firefighters and first responders and law enforcement. We've all gone through situations over the course of the last year where we've been, we have seen the exceptional strength and grace and compassion that is given to us all by nurses, and so I would just like to express my gratitude to them. And if I may brag for a moment, tonight I would like to extend a congratulations to Dr. Alyssa Huntington, my sister, who successfully defended her dissertation in engineering mechanics today. As you can tell, I am extraordinarily proud of her. And that is all for me this
That's
evening.
wonderful. Thank you. Ms. Foster?
I just had one question. It had come up, I had several people in the community pose this when we were looking at passing the budget, and I really couldn't give them a specific answer, so I'm leaning to you. They had asked what positions that we currently have open that are budgeted. So kind of, right, so, when we did our budget, are there any positions that are budgeted that we are in the process of hiring for? Because I know we're always looking at government structure.
Several in public works. We have one for water treatment plant. And then there's one at the library. Where there's actually a lot of seasonals. It's just been tough to hire people.
Okay.
I think all the administrative positions are filled. Got one administration, we've just been leaving that one vacant in the HR area.
And what is the plan on that? If we're budgeting it, are you looking at hiring for it, or is it something, is there a better position that we could utilize with that, that money? What's your thoughts on it?
Fill those positions as soon as,
Okay.
as I guess the employment benefits run out, we start seeing some folks filling some of those positions. We should
Okay.
move the ball up. But all the other localities are having the same problems.
Would it be possible, just, yeah, as I'm out and about, and if I had an idea of what we have available right now, to get a list of the positions that are available, that are budgeted? Thank you so much. That's all I have.
Onassis, what do you have?
Yeah, well, for those of you guys know, I lived in Hawaii for 10 years, so I just want to wish all my friends out in Hawaii, Seattle areas, even here in Radford, a happy Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I just want to say Hawaii, don't call oi. And yeah, that's all I have for tonight, so thank you.
Forrest, what do you have?
Just a brief reiteration as someone with a law enforcement family in light of National Police Week. Just expression of gratitude to all our officers here in Radford, including Radford City Police Department, Radford University Police Department, the local Sheriff's Department, as well as the families of each of those officers who are represented there for the sacrifice that all of them make on a day-to-day basis. That's all from me.
Thank you. And I wanted to add my thanks to those that have been expressed. You know, those that serve others have a special calling, whether it be through police, fire, EMS, nursing, so many different areas that those jobs are immeasurably hard. This last year has been that times 10 for most of those roles, as it has been for so many folks. It was also our National Teachers Week this last week. Again, service is one of the most crucial things we can do for each other. And I'm thankful for everyone that serves and does what they can, and thank you to all. I wanted to mention that May 19th is the Ride of Silence in the city of Radford. That is a ride to bring awareness to bicyclists, to other non-motored vehicle transportation danger and risk. That's something that takes place across our city. And I think, Chief, you know, as we're talking about our bike patrol, having some of those officers present there is a great thing for us to highlight how this alternative transportation is so crucial to our future, but also the safety that all of us have to observe to make sure that everyone is taken care of in those situations. So the evening of May the 19th, I hope everyone can join in that, even if you don't choose to ride, but to celebrate those efforts of the community to try to keep everybody safe. Farmers Market is going on. We want to encourage folks to participate in that. And as I mentioned risk just a minute ago, I do have to brag a little bit on the city a little bit more, that we made the Virginia Risk Sharing Association Insurance Program Gold Star for Excellence Program. And David, you and your team have done that for multiple years. This makes it cheaper for folks to live in the city of Radford. And this is one of the million things that takes place behind the scenes that folks don't see as a headline, but actually affects the bottom line for every family that lives in the city. I don't have anything else this evening, so we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second? All in favor say good night.
Good
Good night.
All right. Pleasure.
So we meet again.
Yeah. Hi.